You're tuned to NBC broadcasting from studios located at Richmond Hill in Kingstown, and this morning we have another update for you. Prime Minister Dr. the Honourable Ralph E. Gonsalves is in studio with us, and joining us by Zoom, Professor Richard Robertson joining us as well. And as usual, we get the ball rolling with Professor Robertson. Good morning to you, sir, and welcome back.
Yes, sorry. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Richie.
Yes, I think
good morning,
you want to say
Prime
good morning.
Is my reception better today?
Yes, it is. It is. We had a terrible connection yesterday, but it's far better today.
I'm on a landline this time. So
excellent.
Should be more stable.
All right. So can you provide us with an update? I know there was another explosive eruption last evening, and can you provide an update on that as well as other related issues?
Yeah. Yes. The pattern of activity that we saw established like more or less 24 hours ago continued overnight. So you had small, long period earthquakes, which continued. Well, it's sort of it starts with these events, which we call long period earthquakes, which are suggestive of magma on its way, on its moving under the volcano. These continued gradually to increase in number. So they increase in number until they get to a certain point. And then when they get to that point, there's an explosion. Last night, what happened is that they continued to increase until around midnight or so, just after midnight. Well, in fact, earlier than that, the actual activity that went on to the explosion was about 8:30. And you had the explosion, and it then went into a sort of, during the time that it was happening, the signal that we have was like tremor, which is the mountain just shaking as it producing these plumes. And then it died down, and we're now into a period where the long period earthquakes are beginning to build up again. Now, the explosion happened in the night, so of course you couldn't really see very much, but in the night, the pyroclastic flows tend to glow, so you see, because they're incandescent. So in the night from the observed view, we could see we could hear the plume going up in the air, get an inkling of it because the lightning strikes give you an outline. But then we saw when there was column collapse, when it collapses on itself, you could actually see the redness at the base of the column as the material falls down onto the ground. And then you could see the incandescence as the red sort of glow moves down the mountainside. From what we could see where dominantly it went, it seems to have gone mainly towards the east. And given which valley we were looking at from this end at Belmont, towards the east must mean that it should have gone down into the Rabaca. Now, we're not sure how far it went, but given that there were several pulses of it, there wasn't just one flow, there were several flows that went into the upper parts of the Rabaca. We wouldn't be surprised if it gets further down. And it's conceivable that it could have gotten as far as the coastline. That was the main place that the pyroclastic flows went. There was one or two that went towards the western side, but dominantly it was towards the east. So the plume went up, and the explosion ended, and it usually then goes into a period of small, long period events, and then it increases, but the number of events increase, and their amplitude, their size increase. Given how long it took to get to the last interval, so the last time it went from between 6:30 and about 8:30 was the interval. About the interval between one explosion and the next was about 12 or 13 hours. And given that the interval between that explosion in the morning yesterday and the one before that was a bit less than that, it's clear that there's a pattern now of increasing intervals. The intervals between the explosions are increasing. So the activity continues where we'd expect you have periodic explosions like you did, and that the gap in between them will continue to increase. And it's conceivable at some point that you would stop having the explosions and you could have a period of quiet. Now, we don't think that it's ended yet. And even though the period where it's quiet goes for a long time, I don't think we'll be convinced that it's ended. And it's possible that at some point you could start again with some more explosions, like you've had before. But generally, we wouldn't be surprised if the pattern from now is one where you would have periods or episodes of explosive activity interspersed by periods of quiet activity. Quiet for people, but not so much for us, because we will see activity in the drums.
Yes, so of course we trusted to keep an eye on that for you. The Prime Minister is here and waiting to join us.
Richie, there are a few questions I want to ask you from your presentation.
Yeah.
Now, in relation to the pyroclastic flows, whether they go on the west or on the east,
Right.
I take it that because those on the west, even though you say they were more on the east this time, some still went on the west.
Yes, we get the impression that one or two went to the upper parts, certainly on the west. Yes.
Okay. Now, and they're crossing essentially, though they may traverse some new paths, they're traversing also existing paths.
That's correct. Yes, the events before, certainly yesterday morning, there were quite a few that went towards the west. So the ones that went towards the west last night would have used similar paths and been traveling the deposits that the other one had laid down. Yes.
No, assuming the energy of these pyroclastic flows to be roughly the same.
Yeah.
When they traverse in the existing paths, presumably, from what you had said, the paths would become clearer for the pyroclastic flows to go further because they would have removed obstacles hitherto.
Yes. Yep.
Is that reasonable?
Yes, that's correct. It's two things. When the flows go down the valley, what they essentially do, apart from basically killing the vegetation, certainly low-lying ones, the taller trees, the strongest trees might survive some of the PDCs, but most of them will get destroyed. So it's destroying the resistance, first of all, that you had to any kind of movement. And then also, it's putting down some deposit, it's laying down material. So what ends up is that over time, the valleys, which might have been very steep, becomes very shallow. So when the other one comes down, it doesn't have that much resistance because the valley itself is causing some resistance because of the shape of the valley. Eventually, what it's running on is a flat plane. And in fact, quite a bit of the plains that we have along the East Coast, East Coast, in fact, Georgetown, for example. If you look at Georgetown, it's a nice flat plain. A lot of that is what we as scientists would say are a pyroclastic fan. It's a fan of material that was laid on by a pyroclastic flow. And that's the kind of topography they create. They create sort of smooth, evenly spaced topography. So that when they run on it now, there's a smooth, even path. And therefore, they don't need to be as energetic. So the first one that came down might have a lot of energy and reach all the way to the coast. The next one that comes down doesn't have to be as big as that one to get to the coast because it's now running on something that is much easier to run on. It's almost like it putting on a road for itself to run on. And once it has the road, well, it can go as fast as it wants to go. In fact, it can reach the sea and just skate onto the sea and go a little bit further.
Now, in relation to the flows, and you say now easier to get to the sea, even if the energy is less with the flows.
Yeah.
And when they go into the sea, something which I want to know, and I believe the listeners would be interested in knowing, do these flows follow a straight line or they spread out? And what is the extent of the spread?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So when they go into the sea, what's going into the sea? The pyroclastic flow consists of material, bigger blocks, that's bouncing along the ground. But it also has a part of it above it that is rising, that is hot, as like a dust cloud that is moving. And then it has a part on the side that is riding, surging on the side. So it's almost like if you're sending a tractor down the road that has a lot of loose material and it's kicking up a lot of dust. Now, when that hits the sea, the heat, because it's so hot, the heat of that material boils the top of the water. So the top of the water starts boiling. And if there's enough material, it means that that boiling water then provides a cushion of bubbles upon which the material that's coming behind can then skate on. So when you talk about lack of resistance, that is perfect for it, because it's now what we call frictionless flow. There's no friction there. There's just bubbles for it to run on. So when it hits the sea now, there's, first of all, nothing resisting it to go all directions. And also, it has a freer land to grow on, to move on. So yes, it does spread. It doesn't go, it's not confined to the valley anymore. When it's coming onto the sea, it reaches the sea. There's no more any valley, just a flat plain. And it's now a flat plain which has a cushion of bubbles in it that could then scoot on. So in fact, it's quite, there is, I remember in Montserrat a long time ago, one of the first pyroclastic flows that were ever recorded hitting the sea. I happened to be in a helicopter at the time, and it's an amazing thing. So it comes down the valley at, say, 100 kilometers per hour, right? And that's fast as it is. And when it hits the sea, it accelerates to about 150. So, and then it moves forward, and you see it moving forward like a foam, because as it moving forward, it's also boiling water that is advancing onto. So therefore, it moves faster in all directions, and it moves very quickly towards anything that is in its way, really. So that's why when we think of the hazards from pyroclastic flows, particularly in islands like ours, we can't think of it as just being on the land. We have to think of it as also being extended outside beyond the land. So all the valleys around Soufriere now, all the land around Soufriere now, given that it could put pyroclastic flow down any part and could reach the sea fairly easily, all of those areas now you have to consider that there must be a buffer outside. There must be a mile or two outside the landmass, where you now have to consider that the red zone extends, the area that you could be affected in a bad way. So, you know, if you have a boat in those areas, if you're fishing, and I know some people fishing, you know, off Soufriere and things like that, you don't want to be close to shore and thinking that the land is always dangerous. Now, the shoreline close to it is dangerous, because things could come down the land and shoot towards you, and you won't be able to get out of the way.
Do I understand, therefore, when you say the headlands, these pyroclastic flows, their spread can appear as though they're in a sense they're coming back to the headlands?
Yes. It's just, I mean, if you think of it, if you have okay, so a flow is coming down, and it comes down and it spreads out. If it spreads out, and this is, to put my finger, is a headland, it could easily spread out and get around that headland. So that it's possible. In fact, one of the concerns now that we would have would be, you know, people, for example, if anybody is living along the coast, or anybody still in say, Fitzhugh and Chateaubriand, now that we have seen, and I think in the report, we've reported that the pyroclastic flows have reached the sea in the wet Wallaboo. For people who don't know who the wet Wallaboo is, as the first river you pass if you go into the volcano on the leeward side. After you pass Richmond, you have to go across the river. And the river, remember that river has water in it, eh?
Yes.
It has a little bit of water in it, because the pyroclastic flow has now buried all that water, and the water is now cutting back into the deposit. But that river is a river that it's reached the coastline. It reached the coastline, and it shoot across, and it reached outside the coastline. Now, if it has done that, it means that the next one that comes down doesn't have to be so big to, first of all, reach the coastline. And if one of the same size come down that can reach the coastline like this one, it will go further. It doesn't have to go that far. If you think of the geography, it doesn't have to go that far for it to be able to get around the barrier, the headland that's between Chateaubriand and, well, Fitzhugh and Richmond. There's a very small headland there that you could get around. And if it's big enough, all it needs is enough material for it to have enough. It's more the mass of the material and the speed at which it's going. If it's big enough, it can actually get eventually into the coastal areas at Fitzhugh and possibly Chateaubriand. That's why those areas now, given what it has done at this point, and it got to the sea yesterday morning, and that the April 13th, the early morning eruption is what brought it to the sea. It's gone to the sea now. I wouldn't be surprised if it puts other stuff down there that it just would be a matter of time if it doesn't stop, for it to curve around, it will then start burning the headland, first of all, get around forward and slowly move inland and possibly get to those areas. So those areas have become much more risky places to be in. And
so they potentially then, Richie, you're saying potentially structures which are close to the sea in Fitzhughes and in Chateaubelair, potentially they could be adversely affected.
Yes, potentially they can be. And in the same way, if you think on the other side now, I'm not sure if it reached Rabaca, but if it reached Rabaca, it means that it can get to
Langley Park,
to areas like that. You know, where you have the airstrip and those places like that, which it wouldn't be very difficult for it to do if it's reaching the sea already, because that's just a flat plain. Essentially, once pyroclastic flows come out of the mountain and the valley, once they come out of the valley, they just spread in all directions. And if there's nothing stopping them, the only thing that stops them is the amount of energy they have. If they have enough strength in them, if they have enough material, they will just keep flowing. And in fact, we know that for a fact because the whole area of Georgetown is a product of exactly the same process that is happening now. They were created, the land that you have, the Langley Park in Georgetown and places like that, were created from pyroclastic flows. So it's just creating more land as it has done in the past. So those areas are all dangerous and shouldn't be places that people should be. Once it's erupting as it is now, once you have explosions, you have the potential for those areas to be affected, and you shouldn't be there.
Let me ask you some other practical questions. You say that you wouldn't be surprised that it would have gone, given that there are flows now on the northeastern side, and from what you have seen, it went to Rabaca. You don't know how far down it has come. Does it?
Right.
The way the geography is configured, and the way in which these pyroclastic flows go, can we have the pyroclastic flows coming down to, say, the overland area, Cayo River, up in the stream, up Sandy Bay, and so on and so forth? Is that those are possible areas where this flow can go?
Yes, I mean it's the volcano in this eruption has operated in a remarkable way. Yes, it's done a bad thing in the fact that it is causing damage, but the way in which it has built up in terms of it's played out its eruption has provided so much warning that, it's unusual. So first of all, we had the dome building period when we had effusive activity. So therefore it told everybody that it was erupting, it was unhappy. And then it had these first explosions, which produced a lot of ash. It didn't produce any pyroclastic flows, just a lot of ash. And the ash trashed everything. And it sort of, if you didn't know that it was erupting, now you know because you had ash all over the place. And then it started to produce these pyroclastic flows. And the pyroclastic flows didn't go towards the west, where most communities are first. It went towards the east, where it's mainly farming and people would have moved out already. And they slowly built up and have gotten to the coastline in most of the valleys. And after doing that, now it's moved towards the east, in a sense, and it's now gone down Rabaca. It hasn't gone down any of the others yet. So it's slowly reoccupying the terrain there. The volcano is slowly putting material all over itself and making itself bigger, which is what volcanoes do. And it's therefore telling us, if you were in those areas, if you're those areas north of Rabaca, which we've been saying forever, if you were in those areas, if you didn't know by now that it wants to do something, it wants to come in your direction, it's telling you that it's gone down all of these other valleys. It now wants to go it's going down Rabaca. It's just a matter of time before it moves north, as you said, the Cayo River, Warabishi, and affecting those areas further north. So it's more than enough time to get out. I think one of the things that worries us who monitor the volcano, the team here and the team at Seismic, and all of us who monitor, one of the things that we try to do is make sure that people get the warning so that they don't get killed. And it really would be unfortunate if people are still there and after all of this, they get caught in there. Because if you get caught in a pyroclastic flow, yeah, it's not a nice thing. I don't want to scare anybody, but it's not. I'm obviously alive, so I don't know how to die like that. But I know from what I've studied, I've seen in the field, it's not a nice way to go. So you don't want to do that. You should get out if you're there.
No, let me let me ask this: the Coast Guard has been moving up to the east for the 5 days before 5 days, and I could talk about that later. And we have taken out persons from Oya.
Yeah.
Given the shifting to the northeast of pyroclastic flows, and you say that there's a potential for it, to use your word, to occupy the volcano and to occupy its terrain or reoccupy it.
Mm-hmm.
And given the fact that it can go out to sea with a particular velocity, particular speed, particular energy, for the Coast Guard to go in at Oya, is that becoming more challenging?
It is. I think, fortunately, we have recognized certain patterns. At least at this present time, there's a certain gap that it has between one explosion and the next. Of course, that could change. That could change with the next explosion. But certainly, we can see the pattern. And if this pattern holds, you have a certain amount of time between the last explosion and the next one.
I understand.
To do certain activity.
I understand.
And I think you need to capitalize on that.
Okay.
The other thing, too, is that one of the things I've always said is that one of the things I always have a problem with, personally, I mean, I'm a scientist, but personally, is that, you give people all this warning, and then some people will say that, okay, I have made a decision that I will stay where I am because I don't want to be killed by something else. I have chosen that I would be, if I am to be killed, and I've spoken to people in Chatterville and I had this conversation, who said that, well, I choose in that if I'm going to be killed, I'm going to get killed by the volcano, not by something else, right? That is okay, that's fine. The problem I have is not so much with that, is with the fact that if something happens to you, you get injured inside there or you get stranded and you now want to come out, somebody like the Coast Guard, the very people that you're saying have to come in and get you, and they then have to put themselves at risk. That's the problem I have. That no matter what, we will always try to rescue people that do that. And I have a problem with them doing it because they're not so much that they're putting themselves at risk, but they're putting other people. And which is what is happening now in the context of the Coast Guard. I think there's a window that they could use, but if the pattern changes, then the window goes and then you can't use it anymore. So now is your chance. I keep saying that the volcano is amazing. It's giving you so many chances to save your life. If you then in there and you die,
Richie, yesterday was the 5th successive day.
Yeah.
That the brave, the courageous men and women from the Coast Guard have gone into Oya, and they have taken out 127 persons. Took out 18, 72, 13, 12, and 12 yesterday.
Yeah.
12. And the point is this, is that these are evacuations. A couple of days subsequent, the first one, a couple of days subsequent to when we had made the first order for the evacuation. So some didn't leave the night, and some didn't leave the next day. God, these are the numbers that I have, and that is just at Oya. And I'll speak to that a little bit later when you come off. Now, Richie, how many members of your team you have down at the Belmont Observatory?
We have 4 persons here currently.
Well, now, we have been having you on, and people we are all having your magnificent service. But we haven't asked you how you coping, how you and your team coping. I mean, you have to wash clothes like everybody, and your clothes go run out. There's water. There's question of food. There's how is it at the moment? How is it at the moment? I know you're laughing.
Well, it's I'm enjoying the dust bowl that I'm living in. It's a dust bowl down here. I mean, it was raining. It was dry yesterday, so there was dust all over the place. You couldn't get out of the ash yesterday. And if people know where Belmont is, we're between Chatabele, we're between Chomoko, and Rosal. So we're in the thick of the ash and the thick of everything else. Well,
you have lost pipeborne water.
Yes, and we lost pipeborne water.
When did you lose that?
So this morning, in fact, I think I had my last shower for a little while. Well, not even shower. I had to use about.
But you have drinking water.
Yes, we do. The NEMO has been quite good in terms of providing support. So they make sure we have supplies and we have water. In fact, they preemptively brought drinking water yesterday, so we have quite a bit of water, but we don't have running water. So yes, you're right. It's a challenge. We have to figure out how to wash clothes and do things and do routine things. So I think we will have some discussions further with yourself and with NEMO in terms of what kind of support we need. But if you're in this business, it's not the first time I think most of us have done this kind of thing. I could tell you lots of stories about Montserrat. And I show my good friend over there, Mr. Stewart, who's in the room with me, who's the seismologist, will tell you stories about Robal. So if you're in this business, that's what we do. We understand that, you have to operate. You have to be hardy in terms of how you operate. You have to be accustomed to taking care of yourself and roughing it out and things like that. When we do this, we are conscious of the fact that there are people who have to be evacuated. We know that it's not easy to be in shelter. So, we provide enough service, but we know that other people have it even worse. So in a sense, we'll do what we have to do it as best as we can. But the team here is just a small component of the team that's providing service here. We have a lot of support in Trinidad, in Montserrat, and we speak to people overseas all the time. We have had a lot of collaborations with people overseas in terms of satellite imagery, in terms of data, in terms of discussion of ideas and things like that. So, it might be a little bit tough for a certain time, but we've done it before, and I think most of us, if you're in this business, you have to be a little tough. You have to be able to, rough it and it doesn't go on forever. But we're interested in what we're doing. I think most people in this line of work, you can't be in it unless you like it, unless you want to serve people, unless you want to, you have to be interested in science as well as you have to be interested in the application of science. And in this field, it allows you to see what your work, the impact your work has in real people. So in real ways. And I think for us, that's what drives it, that that, I mean, it's hard sometimes because you kind of have to make decisions that is really tough, but you tend to focus on what the science and what the mountain is saying really, and give your best estimate. And if you focus on that, then the other things, it's kind of tough, but you roll with it and you adjust and you put a smile on your face and you say, all right, we can deal with that.
I inquire from time to time from Gath, and this morning I happened to inquire about your pipeborne water, and he told me that Rasto reported to him yesterday evening that Rasto from Rose Hall.
Right, yeah, I know Rasto one.
Yes, the source which you get water from there is from a tank. Is up Jack's Hill.
Okay, no, I don't know. We actually occupy a compound which has a huge tank in it, but we don't actually get water from that tank.
Okay, but apparently the eruption caused a disruption to the line.
Okay.
And God he's going to try and see how he could sort that out. I don't know if the source has been depleted, but I
Yeah.
had a discussion like that with him this morning. Now,
Okay.
let me say something on a.
But you, Prime Minister, let me give you a little story to show you how things are. You know, as I said, I think in this current situation, every person and animal having a hard time. One of the things that was sort of tough to see while we're here is the amount of stray dogs that having a hard time. I've seen a couple of them, and we now have a pet hog that comes along every day to get access to some of the water supplies. So the animals having a hard time. So if we're having a little bit of a hard time, we'll be okay still.
That peg hog probably has a fairly high IQ to come by you for water.
Yeah. Well, we're planning that. We're planning that if we run out of food, we have a supply.
I don't think
So we are chasing it.
I don't think some of the animal lovers who will see it as a pet, they'll say,
Well, I
oh.
know that, but still, it's my survival or the pig.
Yes,
So
I
think
know.
I'll choose mine.
Now that we're going there, I should tell you something which your colleagues would tease you about, and your wife would also tease you. I've been advised that because you're on television and you're on YouTube all over the world and so on, and you're such a handsome fellow, and you deliver this thing with so easily, and you explain it to people in St. Vincent and Grenadines and overseas, that there are now persons texting one another and sending message, well, I have to get a date with this man. People all from overseas. I know your wife will not permit it, and you're dealing with the professional work. But
I'll focus on it. I'll focus on it.
Yeah.
And
I want
forget about everything else.
I want TC. I want TC
Yes.
from Montserrat, who is there with you. I know he will review. I know he will review about it. And your colleagues down at St. Augustine.
Yes, of course.
Well, as Caribbean people, we have to have humor in the work which we do while we do it very seriously. Now, there's one footnote I meant to ask you yesterday.
Yeah.
You said that when you did your scientific excursion northwest, and you came down, northwest, and you came over the top and came down north, east, all the way down to Georgetown, that the area which remained green was Fancy. Is this because of that big mountain between Soufriere and Fancy? Is that the protection for Fancy from that standpoint?
Yes, it is, and I'll just say that people see it as a mountain that is separate from Soufriere. It actually is Soufriere. It's part of Soufriere, because Soufriere was actually once upon a time a much bigger mountain, and part of it sort of had a big eruption sometime in the past. I mean many years in the past, and destroyed a part of itself. And inside of it is what the Soufriere that we call Soufriere was built.
When you say many years, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years ago. Yes.
Yeah. So that remnant of that wall that now protects to a large extent the Fancy community is what is providing that barrier. Because what happens is that to get into Fancy, you have to get over it. And the pyroclastic flows would have a hard time getting over that ramp. So though it's protected to a large extent from the flows, you might have some surges, the sort of dilute part of it, and you might have some bombs and you have a lot of ash. But that's the main thing that you have. But the flows, which would really destroy everything, they are likely to get to Fancy. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's one place where there's not as much damage as other places would be in Fancy.
Now, let me ask you this. Is that barrier also making it, because you said it looked green, it means that less ash would probably have fallen there?
Well, yeah. Well, that's the part that is puzzling, because it should not have protected it from the ash. So we don't quite understand it. It must mean that the wind in that direction is really strange, because it should have had not as much ash, but the same kind of ash as any place that is that is downwind of the volcano. But I guess it's because it's more northeast, so the winds tend to blow maybe more to the, well, it should be northeast actually. The wind should be blowing to the northeast. So it should really get ash. So I can't explain that one yet. It has to be it has to do with the wind patterns that as stopping it. Not so much the barrier, I think, it's the wind.
Okay. All right. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to tell us, or you think you've exhausted this morning's briefing. In what?
Yes. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I think I have. I mean, I think as you said, you know, I mean, I'm glad that people listening to us, and hopefully at the end of it, Vincentians would learn a little bit more about the volcano, and that, you know, really, I think if we live on a volcanic island, and St. Vincent is not unique in that regard, we really have to learn to live with the volcano. Learning to live with the volcano means realizing that every now and then it will do what it's doing. And therefore, when it's doing that, we need to leave it alone, let it do what it's doing. But we now have to find better ways to live in the parts of the country where the volcano isn't, while it's doing what it's doing. I mean, we could go and live on it when it's not doing what it's doing. But when it's doing this, we need to find a way in which we could sustain life better. I think we could do a lot better in doing that, both in St. Vincent and in other territories. We tend to, because our volcanoes, fortunately, they don't erupt very often. We tend to forget them. And we go to them and we enjoy them, and we like the beauty and all that, but we forget that every now and then they do what this one is doing. And I think, I'm hoping that the young persons, you know, sometimes you get questions from very young persons. I hope that the young persons remember this, so that when they come, even before they come like me or like you, Prime Minister, and having to make decisions, that they would ensure that the decisions that they make would ensure that life can be sustained in the country, in the southern part of the country, away from the volcano. So that when the volcano doing it doesn't really knock us back that much. I think in the region we could learn a lot more and do a lot more in that regard. And
yes.
I'm hoping that St. Vincent, the lesson here is not for St. Vincent, but the rest of the region too.
Well, I told Gart Saunders this morning that at the moment, the two most important persons in the country are Richie and Garth. Garth because of the water. And a lot of people I've been advised are listening to the Richie and Ralph show in mornings, largely because of Richie, of course. And I want to thank you and your team for doing a fantastic job. And I know your families you're away from your families. Well, you have some here in St. Vincent, but others don't. You know, I want to thank them also for allowing you all to be with us and to provide the service which you have been providing. We're very, very grateful. I should just say that about a week or so ago, just over a week ago, you know, there was a meeting with the Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies in relation to the funding of the Seismic Research Center for your program. And he told me that your program and the funding was fully subscribed, that even countries which have nothing to do with the volcano, that while they may penny pinch on some other things, they said, yes, put our name down for this thing. And I believe that what has been happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is at least that's the view of the Vice Chancellor, that prompted our friends in the region, our CARICOM brothers and sisters, to be putting up the funding. That's what Sir Hilary Beckles told me.
That is excellent news, because we need it. We badly need it.
Yes.
You don't believe how much we need it.
Yes, and I'm sure that some of our development partners would also chip in with some of the developmental aspects. Good. Thanks very much, Richie.
Professor Robertson, before you leave us this morning, a quick question. You mentioned earlier in the presentation that you have the pyroclastic flows that end up in the sea at some points, and the case where fishers tend to fish along the coastline. What sort of implication can this have on the quality of the fish, and maybe even if it's even consumable, you can consume that fish that is caught along that particular area, along the coastline in that area?
Right. And I'll answer, Now, and this is, I apologize if I offend anybody. Once the fish is alive still, you can eat it. More than likely what will happen is that if the fish is along the coast and the paraphyletic flow comes down, it would simply kill the fish and you will see it dead. And then unless it's recently been torched, you should not eat it because it might be rusting and things like that. But otherwise, this fish shouldn't be affected. What might be affected, though, is that if you think of it, what's happening is that it's putting a lot of debris into the sea. So it's going to initially, after it passed through, it would be like dumping a lot of sand or dust and things like that into the sea. And the effect that would have on coral and on sea life is the same as anything else, as well as if you put on that is hot. But once that has passed, the effect should be similar to any other effect of dumping any debris anywhere in the sea. It shouldn't be any lasting effect, like it's poisoning the fish, and that shouldn't happen. It wouldn't work like that. It either kills the fish or the coral, or whatever it is at the time, and they rejuvenate, or else it's fine.
All right. Well, thanks for clarifying that for us, Professor, and do keep up the great work and keep us informed as well. Thank you.
No.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
As I begin my segment, I'm wondering if we can try and get Garth Saunders, because water is critical. We need to know if we're in a better position than yesterday and what are the prospects for today and going up to the weekend. If I may speak about some things which we have been involved in. Yesterday, I had a very long conversation with the Foreign Minister of Canada, who was very keen on assisting the government of Canada. Of course, they operate through a number of NGOs, the Red Cross in times like these, SIDEMA, and their own private sector and non-governmental organizations. But the government itself the government of Canada is committed to assisting us in this period with relief, but also to continue to partner with us in relation to recovery and reconstruction. Garth, you're here? So thanks. Tell us where we are in relation to the water delivery.
Yes, thank you, Mr. PM, and good morning to our listeners. And just before I begin, Mr. PM, I just want to add the gratitude that we have at CWSA and on behalf of Intentions to Professor Robertson for his contribution to where we are thus far, and to say what a very good program, a lesson of instruction we had this morning. Geography students must be smiling. I hope they make use of that information. Okay, so PM, our situation is getting better. We are now on a more solid road to recovery in terms of restoring the water supply system. Apart from the 4 systems that are in the red zone, the 4 systems meaning Oya, Sandy Bay, Fancy, and Hermitage, the water supply systems are generally back on and currently up to about 70%.
Including Jennings?
No, Jennings is out. Jennings is one of the 3 systems that are currently being worked on to have them restored. Jennings, as you know, supplies the entire windward coast from Byra to Diamond. Byra in the north to Diamond in the south. The Perseverance system supplies Georgetown proper from Overland to Chester Cottage and Georgetown. And the Hermitage system is on the leeward side, and that supplies from Richmond to Mount Wynn. So that system is critical as well. The problem with Hermitage, both Hermitage and Jennings, they can get back up, but we have to have access. You have to have proper access. And then once we get in, there's a lot of cleaning to do because there's a lot of damage to trees and along the access roads that have to be cut and moved out of the way so that we can get in and have the systems restored. So we are working on those 2 systems. The Perseverance system we'll leave for last because that is in the red zone. But we will, we'll do our best to get that back on.
How are we coming? how are we coming in cleaning getting away the trees and so on in the roadways going up to both Hermitage on the northwestern side and Jennings up in the Jennings Congo Valley area?
Yes, well, we started on the Jennings, and we are almost through with Jennings, but the Hermitage side, the Hermitage intake is actually just between the orange and the red zone.
Yes.
So that's a problem for us. So we will have to do that. We are going to try to start sometime today or tomorrow to get in there, but it's really in the red zone. You can, it's not a definite line, but it's in that vicinity. So we would have to, be careful and see how we can get in and get that system up and running.
It means, therefore, if you say that Hermitage is the one which is going to be done, say, after, from your analysis, after Jennings,
Yeah.
it means that Barley and Curtains become important focal points for water delivery.
Yes.
What are we doing? Because if you, from what you're telling, and we will come back to precisely the areas where you say have tap water, even though we know the supply would be fragile, it will, and you had made the point yesterday, it's not infinite, and you will have challenges given the nature. We have a volcanic eruption and we have the dust and all the rest of it. Now, what are we doing? Leyu is on a different system.
They use a separate system, a separate spring source.
Leyu is Big Gut and related areas?
That's right. So
Good.
they use supply, so the Leyu source supplies Leyu proper and some of Buckaman.
Okay. So that we are talking now, as you say, from Mount Twin. Well, the main areas which are habitable there are Barley, Curtains, Walilabu.
That's correct.
Good.
Yeah.
And we will come to the prisons in Belial just now because we have to have specificity in this business so that people who are listening to know.
Of course.
How are we getting water to Barley? What is our plan at this very moment as I speak to you?
Okay, the plan for Barley is to continue trucking water to Barley from Pembroke. It's a two-pronged approach right now to truck water from Pembroke and from Leyu into Barley. And also, we have been successful in securing vessels to be able to go into Barley this morning, so we can offload and be able to efficiently truck water in Barley from a shorter delivery point.
When you say vessels with water from where?
Vessels, okay, we have had, and I will just make a little diversion in terms of our bulk water, because we are very happy. We are very happy that we received several pledges and several arrangements for bulk water. Bulk water meaning water from ships. As
Yes.
I mentioned yesterday, we got water from the Logos Hope, which is the boat that was in the harbor for a couple of months. They gave us a lot of water before they left.
Yes.
Then some investors in Tanawan arranged for a boat to bring up both bottled and bulk water, and this was coordinated by one Storm Gonsalves. Then we have 28,000 gallons from the Mustique Company, coordinated by Carlos Williams. That is already in the Kingston port. Then we have the government of Venezuela, as you know, PN, donated 50,000 gallons. It's on the vessel in Port Kingston.
That's in their tank on the vessel.
Yes, on the vessel. The problem with that is that the discharge capacity is not as fast as we would like it to be,
Okay.
but we will do our best to get things off.
Okay.
We also had assistance from Dowasco in Dominica, our sister company, cases of water, and they are sending 2 collapsible bladders from Dominica.
They're sending them by what facility?
A boat will pull 2 collapsible bladders behind them. So
They're putting them in a barge.
No, that's a collapsible bladder that will be floating along.
Okay.
The vessel.
Or
Yes.
the bladder is tough enough to take
Yes.
the journey. Okay.
Yes. And then the Barbados Water Authority also sends shipments of bottled water via the Barbados Defense Force. So once vessels come into St. Vincent, we are diverting some of them down to the leeward side and some to Kingstown to assist us in improving the logistics and cutting down the distribution time.
So while you're dealing with Hermitage,
yes,
what
we will both Hermitage and Jennings at the same time.
Okay.
I just wanted to make it clear. We have different teams. Yeah.
Okay, but let us. We will come to those shortly, because this discussion is probably the most important discussion in terms of supplies. The people in Barley and also at the shelters in Barley, including the big shelter at the secondary school in Central Leeward at Peter's Hope. When can they expect this vessel, which is coming from Canawan, to be in the harbor in Barley?
In speaking to Bishan last night, Bishan John of the Port Authority, he indicated that it should be there sometime this morning.
Okay.
So we will have, yes.
But would you have trucks there immediately?
Yes.
To take them?
To take them, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. In addition,
so
of course...
We'll be focusing on the shelters and the schools and the important facilities, in addition to the residents, of course. But
No, because what happened is this. The residents, people who are in Barley, they're having real problems. So it's not just the shelter. The shelter is vital, clearly. But people who live in there, in Barley, they have a problem with the water, as you will be aware.
Yeah.
No, and I expect Nemo will send down bottled water to the shelters.
Yes, I think that is the most critical thing. The bottled water is essential. So we
but
we will get the running water back up.
But people need the running water to bathe, to wash garments. It's so we need to get that water. So that is Barley. Let us address what is happening on the areas in which we now have. You say you have an improved situation outside of the red zone and the problem of Hermitage and Jennings, which you are working on. What are the systems which we have up and running, and what is their capacity and where they're supplying?
Yes, okay. Well, we have, as I mentioned, all of the systems outside of Jennings, Hermitage, Perseverance.
The biggest system in the country is Dalloway.
The main system is that supplies just about 38 to 40% of the population, and then followed by Jennings and
that supplies South Leeward and Kingstown.
Yes, from South Leeward all the way to Calico.
No, is everywhere in between there have airborne water? No, as we speak.
I would think about 70 to 80% of those persons presently. Yes, there are some high areas that are not yet have not yet received the full supply, or those high areas are also supplied by both Majorca and Montreal, because there's a mixture. There's a mixture in between.
Okay, so the shelter in Calico should have water.
I suppose it should have, because I haven't had a report yet for, this morning from my engineering team in terms of the improvements we had last night on the Dalloway system in terms of getting it back up to full capacity.
Okay.
But I will ascertain that this morning, because it means that the Golden Vale has to be charged before we get water.
The Mamoon Mount St. Andrew system, that is up and running? How what percentage of the demand that supplies?
A small percentage, maybe about 5%, but it's a critical source because it helps to bolster any shortages from the Majorca and Dalloway system in the higher areas, especially higher areas of Green Hill,
Sharps,
etc. So it's a critical, and it comes all the way down to Old Montrose, actually.
Okay. The police station, the police, the Old Montrose police station, and all that area, including the Prime Minister's residence, that's covered from Mamoon.
Hope you had water. Yes, Mr. PM. So I hope you had water this morning.
Yes, I don't know whether it was from the pipe or from the tank. Okay. I know when I turned on the tap this morning, I had, but yesterday afternoon when I went up, I didn't have. But that might have been some localized issue. I'm not complaining.
Yes.
I'm not complaining. I'm just, that's not my. What about inside of Mespo? Because places like Lacroix and Acres don't have water.
Right. So
as
that was the report yesterday.
As I speak to right now.
Yes. What we have done overnight is to start getting the Montreal system back online up to full capacity. It is now at 60% and climbing because we were only relying, prior to yesterday evening, we were only relying on the spring sources at Montreal, but we were able to add some additional sources to that. And hopefully, before the end of the day, things should improve and we should get the Montreal system back up to its regular capacity, which would help out with Mespo and the Acres system, the Acres area as well.
I mean, I know.
It's a gradual improvement process.
I know I'm driving you hard, and therefore your workers, and I know you're doing a very good job, and the workers doing a very good job beyond the call of duty. But you'd appreciate that I'm inundated with calls and
both are. Yes. We both are.
and also, you know, the humble African informers this morning to Frederick Augustus Stevenson. Same thing, places like the inland places like we were raised last time, Adelphi, Simon, New Prospect.
Yes. Those are all areas on the Jennings system, and those areas will be serviced today in a more focused manner. Now that we have
Peruvian,
a lot more areas with pipe-borne water.
Peruvian Vale, Yambu, Calder, Carapan.
Yes.
Down to Diamond.
Yesterday, I made the point that those areas yesterday were supplied with a finite amount of water from the storage tank at Jennings. So that storage tank has now been depleted. So we have to redouble our focus. Oh, and I must mention importantly that we have completed all of the pipe work to restore the spring at South Rivers. So reconnected. And we'll be able to supply Park Hill and South Rivers and some areas just south of that.
The old spring which we were talking about?
It's the spring, the spring above River 40.
The old spring?
Yeah.
Well, Chris Ralph in New York would be very pleased to hear that. Chris, if you're listening.
Yeah.
and Chris had called to remind everybody that was not used for some time.
Yes. So we have to do the quality checks and complete the final tie-in this morning, and then we'll put that back into commission.
So that means South Rivers and Park you will have from that old spring.
We'll have some relief as well, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Praise God. We get in there day by day, sweet Jesus.
Yeah, you see, the CWSS staff, Mr. PM, I know you thanked them yesterday, but they continue to work every day to try to get this system and work day and night. You know, so it's you know, we just hope the public understands what it is we are doing. We are doing makeshift measures, and we are trying to restore the more permanent systems as well. So it's a varied approach, but we are just doing what we can the shortest possible time.
If you were to taking out what we call the red zone,
Yes.
what capacity do we have at the moment? What is the extent of the capacity overall? How much you think? We are at 60%?
Yes, I think we're at 60 and 65. And yesterday we were there, but then it was fluctuating. But I think we are on a little more solid ground today than we were yesterday.
Okay, that's.
So we're consolidating what we have restored so far and getting things.
Okay.
And I also want to mention, Mr. PM, that we met with administratively. We met with a PAHO WHO consultant, Adriana Zlugman, yesterday at CWSA. He brought with him some test kits and chlorine tablets to assist us with water quality. And
Yes.
he was also able to consult with his colleague in New Zealand, Carol Stewart from the School of Health Sciences in Wellington University, in Massey University in Wellington. And as you know, New Zealand has this White Island volcano that erupted in 2019.
Yes.
And the information and advice that he gave was very useful and encouraging to us because, he gave also advice on the cleanup of volcanic ash. And it revealed that a lot of our concerns about the short-term chemical quality of the water would be alleviated. They were alleviated by what was sent to us, and they still recommended that CWSA should still embark on its own independent validation of what the experts said.
Clearly. As you are, all the water which is sent in bulk, you test it to make sure that it's...
Testing them before, exactly.
Yes.
And we are sending some samples to Trinidad as well, to CAFA, to have them analyzed. And there's another lab in Trinidad that will do some water quality analysis for us.
I want to... I want to ask I just get additional messages here. Bellevue, in the Connery area, they haven't gotten water for 3 days.
Yes.
And Green Hill hasn't been with water for several days because they're supposed to get from Mamoon, Green Hill. From Majorca.
Yes, from Majorca. So we will fine-tune the connection between Mamoon and Majorca sometime today so that they can get, because the Majorca system was interrupted yesterday because of water issues, because we had some rain up there.
Well, I will tell you this.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm talking to you, Bonham, Belvedere, and then Trigger Ridge up Sharps, Redemption Sharps, Kingston Park.
Those are the higher elevations that I indicated with their systems or their supply will be restored gradually.
Clay Valley.
It's a gravity-fed system, and they are at the higher end.
Clay Valley, Chapins, Hopewell, Top Edinburgh, Southwood.
Very good, very good. So we'll have that.
Prospect,
target them.
Lomans, Great House. Now, I want to say something to you, Garth. There's an important social consideration apart from the water need and the question of solidarity, which we must keep going.
Yeah.
For instance, you have a village like Chapins, which haven't had water for a few days.
Running water. Yeah.
Well, even other water too. There's been a problem. So what?
I've been in the top ends area, Mr. Pierre.
Oh, well, I didn't get that.
I think you're referring to running water, yes.
I didn't get that report. But what happens is this. There is Caliaqua. Caliaqua has 120-odd persons in the shelter. And we have to take care of them because we brought them there. But, so the people in Chapins, some people are saying, and this is elsewhere, it's happening. They say we're looking after the people in the shelters and we ain't concerned about people who in these villages who didn't move. Because Chapins, you don't have to move. You're in the zone You're in the green zone. And then their homes and so on.
Yeah.
But I don't want us, of course, most people overwhelmingly appreciate, but I don't want us to have any social fraying so that the
Yeah.
water issue is not only an issue to satisfy ourselves as human beings, but the social solidarity we've had with one another. We don't want to have that fray. We don't
Yeah.
want to have that broken, because when we have that broken, we're going to have other sets of problems.
Yes, and something I'm sure you would appreciate, and I just want again to thank the business community and the private sector for the trucking of the water into these areas.
Okay.
CWS is limited, but we've received some complaints that the trucks that are not sent by CWSA go on their own and deliver water to specific areas over which CWSA has no control really.
Yes, well, they should probably go.
We try to guide them, but at the end of the day, the actual distribution, the actual delivery.
Well,
is not under our
the
control.
supply and transport people at NEMO should also provide advice. So I'm sure that they're listening to this program. And of course, when I said Belvedere just now, I also include Brighton.
Yes.
We didn't have, and just we have to remember, 705 NBC radio is on all day, all night, and we have to make sure that they have water too, because they're performing an important service.
Yes.
Now, the thing is this: what about since we have private dialysis facilities and we have the public one, which has come from Georgetown and is moved to Kingstown. Well, the Kingstown one is okay because it has at Milton Keyto, because you have that water there.
Yes.
What happened to the private sector dialysis facilities? Are they getting water?
Yes, they're getting water, and up to last evening, we went and filled their tanks for them because I believe there's some operations scheduled for today. So we're in close contact with the management there, and we are ensuring.
Okay. All right. Well, that is good news. Now, what about the bakeries have gotten water? Because bread is a cheap source of sustenance.
Yes, I believe some have gotten the main ones. I'm not sure about all the bakeries where they are, but certainly once they call and they request, we give them the priority.
And similarly, we have, in addition to the shelters, we have a number of, people who cook at some shelters, like those tuck shops for secondary schools where people are, and certainly in the primary schools where we have good kitchens because of the school feeding program in the primary schools. But in addition, we have hired to make sure that food is delivered on a more timely basis. In certain areas, we have hired caterers. And they obviously need the water also to cook. So that this is I'm placing many burdens on you.
Yes.
Because there's no other way else I can place it.
I hope I'm big and broad enough to bear them.
All right then. No.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know if there's anything else which you want to tell us on water.
Not much else on water. I just wanted to add, though, the other branch of CWSA, the solid waste.
Yes.
We've increased the collection service. We have co-opted more trucks into the system to be able to more efficiently remove solid waste from those facilities and the general area.
Okay, well, that's very good news, because I was concerned about that.
Yes. So
all right.
That's about it. Okay, so
thanks.
We'll continue with the challenges, and I said the main thing is to get those sources that are out to get them back up as quickly as possible. We thank all the private sector and the regional and international bodies that have been assisting us. And we just want the public, again, to continue with their forbearance for a little while longer. We are doing our best. Okay, CPM?
And the delivery is by the trucks?
And delivered by the truck, yes.
Okay.
So, to those areas that are not presently supplied with pipe-borne water.
Yes. Now, thank you very much, Garth.
Okay.
I want if I'm sure that they're listening to me at the office. Carlos James could go ahead and lead the discussions, Angie, with that meeting. I will join it at some time, that Zoom meeting. Because there's some things I need to finish here. There's an international meeting and connected to a number of entities, including some regional and global tourism entities. But I will be there shortly, Carlos, and you can go ahead and lead the discussion from our part. There are a few things I want to just mention. Well, I was reporting, just as Garth started, I had a good conversation with the Canadian foreign minister. I was talking to the Americans yesterday. We had a very good conversation with the American ambassador. And I continue to all over the world, the various agencies. I'm in touch with our people in our UN office, our diplomats elsewhere, and they're working. I'm told that the fundraising with the imprimatur of the government from the High Commission, our High Commission in London. Yesterday evening, I think they went past, in the all evening our time, they went past £100,000, which wasn't bad. In fact, which is quite good. And there are others. Then we are in touch. Well, we certainly were in touch with the Canadians, the Americans. We're in touch with the British. The French are bringing some supplies today actually, and they're having people coming up additionally. I just want to talk a little on the security question. We have 50 security personnel from Trinidad on the ground. And we are getting, coming in, maybe today, tomorrow, we are having 40 from Barbados under the RSS, 30 from the Barbados Defense Force, and 10 others, and 10 from Grenada. We do not as yet have what you may call a security problem. I received a security briefing this morning from the Commissioner early, which reported, broadly speaking, that the security situation overnight was fine. But the history of disasters have taught us, not just here but elsewhere, that you're going to have security challenges developing. For instance, we got reports yesterday and we intercepted 2 persons that we got intelligence that there were persons who had arrived at a particular area on the leeward side of the island, which has been evacuated. The intelligence was that they were to break houses and to take people's important valuables and put them on boat and go elsewhere and sell and so forth. Well, we were looking for 4 persons. We got 2 persons. And we have those persons. We didn't find anything with those 2 persons whom we have, but we're trying to develop our even better in these circumstances, our intelligence network, and the Coast Guard is doing tremendous work. so that I don't want the dengue problem we have, the volcano problem we have, that I have on top of it is security problem. So I have to head that off. And that is why I'm getting early in the day. And if need be, I will get reinforcements. I'm determined that such persons do not have space to function. Then, and I want to thank our police officers, and they're doing a good job. I also want to thank the prison officers for stepping up. And there is a solidarity also among the prisoners in everybody working together. That's what has been reported to me. Of course, you will always have one or two betwixt and between who may create difficulties, but let's not dwell on those. We deal with those as they, and I have systems deal with that. A big issue which we have, as of day before yesterday, I didn't get the number yesterday evening, I'll get it this morning. We had nearly 3,000 persons who, through hundreds of places that they had gone, private homes, to seek refuge. People, friends and family, taking people. We are continuing the registration. I'm sure the numbers it gone up to 4,000. Okay, well, Dion is now telling me it gone up to 4,000. I'm not surprised that is the case, because there are more persons who are in private homes than we have in shelters. And as persons will know, we had long expected that a next phase of this support system would be individuals who are in homes, private homes, who need support packages. But unless we know, we are not going to be able to make the arrangements to help to supply. So I want you to continue to check NEMO. There are persons who, like a family called me this morning from Barley, and I said to them, well, they wanted some food. I said to them, well, the nearest thing to do is to go over to the shelter at the biggest of the shelters, and one I happen to know the shelter manager, to say to her at the Central Leeward Secondary School, I want some food for myself and my children. But we have to make sure that this is done in a structured and organized way, because you can't go and just deliver to individual homes. And there's a system which is being devised for this and for delivery of support. Not everybody needs the support, but a lot of people need the support. So that's a big area. I just want to identify that. The other thing is this. There are some persons who did not go into who did not go into the shelters, who did not go into homes, but who booked into hotels or guest houses themselves. And after 2 or 3 days, saying to the hoteliers that the government will pay for them. I just want to say that so long as all so long as these are approved places and that the rates which are being charged are rates which are at or below where we put people in, and these persons are in the categories to go inside of the guest houses or hotels, we will pay. It's not an automatic thing because there are certain criteria. Otherwise, you will have persons leaving their homes and just checking themselves into hotels and think that the government will simply pay. There are criteria for this to be done. And I just want to advise them it's not as simple as I'm just checking in. There is occasionally there's a matter which is drawn to my attention, and I want to speak to it. And sometimes errors may occur in decision making in the chain. There's a child who is 14 years old, who is the mother of a 1-month-old baby. The head of the household is a woman who is still in the community where the evacuation is taking place from, with her partner, and didn't want to leave. She and her partner didn't want to leave. But this lady has several other children and sent the children, small children too, to the hotel, and the hotelier took them. The matter was reported to the relevant entity within the NEMO structure. The head of the household, the woman who finally decided that she would come, because you can't leave a 14-year-old child who has a 1-month-old child. I'm not addressing the question here yet as to whether that matter had been drawn to the attention of the police. I don't know. But I'm dealing now with the fact which is before me. And the mother reluctantly agreed, that is to say the head of the household, to come. Because a 14-year-old child with a 1-month-old child, with a couple of siblings younger than her, they can't take care of themselves. But the mother decided to come, finally, the head. But that the establishment concerned said, well, I'm concerned about my staff who are vaccinated. The children, the 14-year-old and those younger, can't be vaccinated. But the mother, who's the head of the household, would come. Say, well, if that person is not vaccinated, we're not going to have that person there. So the children are there, including this 14-year-old mother. And the decision was taken somewhere in the structure to put all of them into a shelter. And I understand how that decision could have been made. But what should have happened there is that they should have been taken to a guest house which doesn't have any staff and which isn't so the hotelier would not be worried about anybody infecting members of their staff, and to put the requisite support systems. And I think that is being corrected this morning. But difficulties like these will arise. But when they arise, let us not make them a cause célèbre. Let us sort the problem out with good sense and good flexibility. Because that 14-year-old child who is a mother with a 1-month baby and with siblings below her age, I am sure that family would have been in the system at social development. It is difficult to think that family would not have been, and I expect that it would have been. In fact, I'm pretty sure. No. We heard Professor Robertson this morning about narrowing of the window for the Coast Guard to go to places. In the last 5 days, days after the evacuation order was given, we have still been picking up people at Oya. As I said, yesterday was 12, the day before that was 12, the day before that was 13, then 72, then 18. So those 5 days, we have 127 persons. There is a young man, 19 years old. I don't know him. He has some challenges mentally. And the matter had been drawn to my attention. And day before yesterday, I had the Coast Guard go with 2 of his uncles to pick him up. But somebody up there who was remaining persuaded him to stay, and he didn't come. Fortunately, day before yesterday, 12 others came. So that after the evacuation order was made, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 occasions for him to come. That is 4 occasions after the evacuation order. Somehow somebody had some influence over him. And yesterday, I asked the Coast Guard commander again to go, because I went to sleep night before last with this young man on my mind. And I got up in the morning yesterday with him on my mind, and I called the Coast Guard commander early in the morning. And Commander Kane had every single reason. His arguments were completely rational not to go because of the increase in risks to the staff there, and also the ash to the engines of expensive vessels, and all those things related to material costs too. But I had to say to the commander, and I'm thankful that he accepted, because he's a good and Christian gentleman. I said, Commander, I went to sleep with this young man on my mind, and I got up in the morning yesterday with him on my mind. I said, this young man is a symbol of our humanity. And it is a manifestation of our love and solidarity to go for him. And it is an essential ingredient of our hope and our faith. And thankfully, yesterday, when we went, we got him out. And 11 others came with him. Now, they are still, we have had to send on the leeward side also, even by road, to Rose Hall. And we are getting those who, either persons who had left elderly ones or persons for one reason or the other don't want to come out, but the window is narrowing sharply. And given the pyroclastic flows, for heaven's sake, leave. If you are over in Fancy, or in Point, or in Oya, or you're in Sandy Bay, or wherever you are, you get to Oya, and somehow if we get to know, and given the cycles, the pattern which the for these eruptions and the prospects of the pyroclastic flows, we have narrow windows. Please, I am asking you, do not risk anymore your life and your limb. We have done well in having no deaths, no injuries. We love you very much. We want to help to take care of you. Now, yesterday, for instance, on this 12th, and you could see why the Ministry of Health is very concerned about doing the PCR tests and also doing our rapid antigen tests and doing and doing vaccinations, because we are in the time of COVID. One of the 12 persons yesterday is someone who is historically from some 2 weeks ago, just over 2 weeks ago, we have the record that he was tested positive. But we couldn't find him to test him again. Even when the community health services went looking for him. Well, he's one of the late stragglers, so to speak. We have to know, well, we tested him now, we don't know the result. But we have to, all those who are on the vessel would have to be tested. And if there's any problem, then there's the question of the contact tracing at a time like this. This is why, for persons who are encouraging people not to test or not to take the vaccine, they are irresponsible. There are persons who are refusing to test. I'm not reaching the stage yet of vaccine. Well, how can we meaningfully control the pandemic in a situation like this? Even though you don't have symptoms, half of the people who test positive for COVID don't have symptoms. So it is vital that we continue to do our testing. 3 days ago, as you know, it was reported that down in the Pembroke district, which involves South Leeward, there were 12 cases of COVID. Thankfully, it doesn't appear as though, thus far, the analysis, that we have had any wider spread from that group, those individuals. But we have on our hands, in relation to COVID, something which can get completely out of hand. Because in addition to the shelters, the persons who are in homes which used to have 3 persons, now have 5, 7, and 8. I can't overemphasize this too much, and we have to be responsible. This is not now a question of for us to return to normalcy and the economy and all that. This is now the question of taking care of ourselves and our neighbor being everybody else. Because in addition to the volcano, if we allow this, if we are not strict on the COVID measures, we are going to have, more than likely, and I've been advised of this by the chief medical officer, outbreaks. And we can't afford to have that at any time, and worst of all at this time. And what the knock-on effect that would do to the health services and the like. I believe that what will help us too in calming ourselves, we have to be disciplined. And a young man who has had quite a following as a pastor came to see me, and he made certain revelations to me. And we need to pray more, both in the reality of God and what prayer, an earnest prayer which goes to Him, a sincere prayer which avails much. But when you're praying also, it puts you yourself in a frame of mind when you are likely to be more disciplined and to give consideration more to your neighbor. There's much more to be said, but I have to go. This has been a long one this morning because of what we had to get from Professor Robertson and from Garth. We continue to do our work, be strong, be calm, be disciplined, and we thank all those who have reached out in the Caribbean to help us. Thank you very much, and may Almighty God continue to bless us all.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves.